Martin Scorsese's The Irishman screened for the first time publicly at the New York Film Festival on September the 27th. The film received unanimous praise, not least because of the stellar cast, which included for the first time in the same film Al Pacino, Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, all of whom were on the panel during a press conference at the New York Film Festival, along with director Martin Scorsese and producers Emma Tillinger-Koskov and Jane Rosenthal. The entire interview is available on YouTube, so you don't really need to watch this video, but I just wanted to take a brief look at the interview and talk about a few things I found interesting. There's also individual interviews with the actors scattered around from the opening night of The Irishman's premiere, wherever journalists could get a chance to speak to the cast. A lot of it is more of what we've already heard. In fact, the main cast don't seem too keen on constantly replying to the same questions again and again. There's a lot more detail and entertainment to be found in interviews with the supporting cast like Ray Romano and Bobby Cannavale. The conference, though, is the first time we have seen the four titans share the stage in an interview. It's an incredible sight to see De Niro, Pacino and especially the elusive Pesci on the same stage, talking about this historic picture that once seemed like a faraway dream but is now a concrete reality. But at the same time, it is a discussion featuring several old men in their late 70s, and it feels like a discussion featuring several old men in their late 70s. There are some things I would have done differently if I was someone organising, like giving each actor their own mic so they're not constantly having to pass them over, and give them one of those ones that you can clip onto your chest so they can talk freely, as many times the actors forgot to raise their mics and you can't clearly hear what's being said. There isn't really a flow to the conversations either. People mishearing questions and there's a lot of pauses. It will sound great when edited a bit more tightly. You can also tell these guys aren't really used to doing press interviews. They're from a generation that was around before all these contractual obligated press junkets became the norm. The host could have been a bit more prompting, but he does have the daunting task of being on the receiving end of stares from Nicky Santoro, Tony Montana and Al Capone. Scorsese is his normal talkative self, and his infectious energy really carries the interview. Pacino, who looks a bit like an ancient Chinese warrior here, is always a delight during interviews, and he is so here. De Niro is as quiet and reserved as he always is, but he's made to look like a complete chatterbox when compared to Joe Pesci. What was up with him? He must have really hated being there. He checks his watch 2 minutes in and was asked one question to talk about how he came onto the project, and his answer is no. That's more or less all they could get out of him. Maybe he had trouble hearing or some other issues. He is, 76 after all. Or maybe he's content to being a jerk. He doesn't care who knows it. That's a Goodfellas reference, by the way, before you jump down my throat. Pesci's last involvement was saying, while pointing at Scorsese, I just do whatever he tells me to do. This is the second time the four have come together during an interview, but the first time we can actually see it. They previously did an exclusive for Empire magazine, which I've covered in previous videos, and a lot of the stuff covered here is pretty much the same. They talk, for example, about how there was a movie called Frankie Machine that De Niro and Scorsese were looking to make, but they ditched that when De Niro read I Heard You Paint Houses and he chose to pursue this new project instead, intending to bring on Al Pacino and Joe Pesci. They speak about the tests that De Niro did for the de-aging CGI used in the film, which bamboozled Pacino, who was bewildered until it was explained to him what was going on. They talked about the lengthy 108 days of shooting, the constant location changing, and the new massive camera they used for the film, which was necessary for the CGI. Scorsese and Al talk about meeting each other in the 70s and failed previous projects where they attempted collaborations. Scorsese also talks about how they had consultants on set for the actors to help them move like younger men. He tells a story of Pacino getting up off the sofa where it was pointed out he's supposed to do it like he's in his 40s and he had to repeat the take. Pacino also repeats what he mentioned in a previous video I made about having recordings of Hoffa to use to help him with his performance. And finally, they talk about how they couldn't get the money to get the film made until Netflix stepped in. There were a few things I found interesting. The first was that Pacino mentioned while they weren't filming, he would be listening to the real-life Hoffa speaking on his headphones. I had seen photos of Pacino on set with headphones on, and as he mentioned in the interview, you just assume he's listening to music. But again, showing how much dedication he has to the role, he was actually listening to Hoffa himself to get into the character. The second thing I found interesting was that an audience member who saw the film mentioned that in I Heard You Paint Houses, the book, Frank Sheeran says he made a top secret delivery of some firearms, and a few days later, JFK was assassinated. Sheeran didn't want to elaborate, but the insinuation is clear that the mob got to JFK, who they despised. This is a major part of the book, and something author Charles Brandt believes. But according to the audience member, there is no reference to this in the film. No reference to the mob killing JFK, nor Sheeran transporting weapons that may or may not have been used in the killing of JFK. Scorsese addresses this by essentially saying that they weren't looking to make a conspiracy theory movie, going into, did Frank Sheeran really do this, and did he really do that? It was more of a case of making a film where the actions he committed during his life affected him in his old age, the nature of who we are as human beings, guilt, love, betrayal, and forgiveness. He doesn't really want things in a movie where the validity can be contested, and takes away from the issues that Bufalino, Hoffa, and Sheeran, the characters that the three leads play, were going through, and mentions that the Frank Sheeran in the movie is a character, not the real-life Frank Sheeran. The only reference to this in the film is a scene where Pesci gives De Niro a ring and warns him regarding Hoffa, played by Pacino. He says something along the lines of, if they can get to the President of the United States, they can get to the President of the Teamsters. Scorsese says that line is open to interpretation, and it remains the only reference in the movie that Scorsese allowed that the mob may have been involved in the killing of JFK. The Irishman is set to be released on Netflix on November the 27th. Thanks for watching.